I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would cheat. But here I am, telling you a story I never imagined living. My name's Emily, and I've been married to Jake for 8 years. We were that perfect couple everyone envied, high school sweethearts who made it through college, got good jobs, and bought a house with a white picket fence. On the outside, everything looked great. But inside? Inside, I was drowning. Jake is a good man. Steady, reliable, predictable. Too predictable. The same kisses, the same conversations, the same date nights at the same Italian restaurant where he always orders the same damn chicken Alfredo. I used to think that predictability was comforting, but over time, it started feeling like a cage. And then, there was Adam. It started innocently, doesn't it always? Adam worked in my office, a new hire in the marketing department. He was the opposite of Jake in every way, spontaneous, exciting, unpredictable. I noticed him noticing me, and I liked it. He made me feel seen. And before I even realized what was happening, I was waiting for those moments at the coffee machine, lingering in the break room just a little too long, smiling too much. The first time it crossed a line was at an office happy hour. Jake was home, probably watching another rerun of Friends, while I was out, laughing with Adam like I hadn't laughed in years. I felt alive. When he touched my hand, just a brush of his fingers against mine, it was like an electric shock. I should have pulled away. I didn't. I remember the first lie I told Jake that night. It ran late, I said, standing in our dimly lit kitchen, my heart pounding, the ghost of Adam's touch still on my skin. I felt guilty, but also exhilarated. It escalated quickly. A business trip to Chicago sealed the deal. I told myself it would just be drinks, just conversation, but deep down, I knew. We ended up in his hotel room, and for the first time in years, I felt wanted in a way that wasn't just routine. It was passion, heat, something I thought I'd lost forever. After that, it was like a drug. Sneaking texts, secret lunches, stolen moments in his car after work. I was living 2 lives, and for a while, I convinced myself it was harmless. I wasn't going to leave Jake. I loved him. At least, I thought I did. Then came the moment everything shattered. Jake found a text, a simple, "Miss you already," from Adam. He confronted me that night, his face pale, his hands shaking. I'll never forget the look in his eyes, hurt, disbelief, betrayal. I could have lied. I almost did. But something in me broke, and I told him the truth. The worst part? He didn't yell. He just stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger, like he was trying to figure out how the woman he trusted with everything could do this to him. And honestly, I didn't have an answer. Now, I'm here, in our empty house. Jake left to stay with his sister, and I'm staring at the half-packed suitcase I don't have the courage to finish. I don't know if I regret it. I miss him, but I also miss the way Adam made me feel. People say once a cheater, always a cheater. But I don't know if that's true. I think sometimes, people just get lost. And right now, I'm more lost than ever. Jake being gone felt unreal at first. I walked through the house like a ghost, expecting him to walk through the door at any moment, cracking some stupid joke about forgetting his keys again. But he didn't. And with every hour that passed, the silence grew louder. I thought about calling Adam. I thought about texting him, meeting up, letting him take me away from the mess I'd created. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't fix anything. I couldn't just run to him like he was some escape route. He wasn't. He was never supposed to be more than whatever this was. A week passed. Then 2. Jake hadn't come home, and I hadn't heard from him. The loneliness hit me in waves. Some nights I'd sit on the couch, staring at the empty space next to me, and other nights, I'd bury myself in work, pretending nothing was wrong. And then, one night, he called. His voice was different. Colder. "We need to talk," he said. Just that. No, hey, no small talk. Just straight to the point. When he came over the next day, he didn't even sit down. He just stood in the living room, looking around like he was trying to remember why he loved this place, why he loved me. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words just stuck in my throat. "I talked to a lawyer," he said, finally meeting my eyes. And just like that, my heart cracked wide open. Divorce. It was happening. The thing I thought was just a possibility, something that might blow over, was becoming real. I felt tears sting the corners of my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I had no right to cry. "I'm sorry, Jake," I whispered, but it sounded so small, so insignificant. Like an afterthought. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah. I know." He didn't sound angry anymore. Just tired. Like I had drained the life out of him. And maybe I had. I started, but he shook his head. "Don't," he cut me off. "Don't try to explain it. It doesn't matter anymore." And that hurt more than anything. Because for me, it did matter. The why, the how, all of it. But he was done trying to understand. And maybe he was right, what was left to explain? I made a choice, and now I had to live with it. When he left, I sat on the floor of our bedroom and cried until there was nothing left in me. The thing they don't tell you about cheating is that it doesn't just destroy your relationship, it destroys you. I looked at myself in the mirror the next morning, and I barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were hollow, my face pale. I used to be someone Jake could trust. Now I was the person who broke him. I ended things with Adam that same day. He didn't seem surprised when I told him I couldn't do this anymore. He just shrugged, like it had all been inevitable. And maybe it was. In the end, I was left with nothing. No Jake. No Adam. Just me, sitting in an empty house, wondering how I let it all slip away. The guilt? It doesn't go away. It lingers, creeping into the quiet moments. I think about the night it all started, how easy it was to cross that line, and how impossible it is to undo it. Some days, I convince myself that I wasn't happy, that I needed something more. Other days, I realize I just made a selfish choice because it felt good in the moment. I don't know if Jake will ever forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive me. But I do know this, cheating isn't just a mistake. It's a choice. And sometimes, that one choice ruins everything. Weeks turned into months, and the empty house became my reality. The papers arrived in the mail, thick and heavy, like a physical weight pressing down on me. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at them for what felt like hours. The words blurred together, irreconcilable differences, division of assets, irretrievable breakdown. It felt so clinical, so final. I signed them. My hands shook a little, but I did it. Jake didn't come back after that. No calls, no messages. Just silence. I kept thinking that maybe, just maybe, he'd have a change of heart. That one day, he'd show up at the door and tell me he missed me. That he couldn't throw away 8 years just like that. But life isn't a movie, and Jake wasn't the kind of guy to look back once he made up his mind. One night, after too many glasses of wine, I found myself scrolling through his social media. Stupid, I know. But I needed to see him. To know if he was okay. And there it was, a picture of him and his friends, smiling at some bar downtown. He looked happy. Or at least, like he was trying to be. I noticed a woman standing close to him, too close. My stomach twisted, and I hated myself for it. I had no right to feel jealous. I guess it's funny, in a messed up way. I was the one who broke his heart, and yet here I was, feeling bitter that he might be moving on. The thing about cheating is that it forces you to confront parts of yourself you didn't even know were broken. I used to blame Jake for everything, his predictability, his lack of excitement, his routines. But after losing him, I realized something I wasn't ready to face before. The problem wasn't him. It was me. I kept searching for something to fill the void inside me, something new, something thrilling. But no matter where I looked, I always ended up feeling empty again. I thought Adam was the answer, but he was just a distraction. A band-aid on a wound I didn't want to acknowledge. I started therapy. It felt weird at first, sitting across from a stranger and spilling out all my ugly truths. But eventually, I started to understand myself more. Why I did what I did. Why I let my marriage fall apart instead of fighting for it. I told my therapist about the day Jake proposed to me, how he had this goofy nervous smile and dropped the ring in a plate of spaghetti. I laughed back then, thinking it was the cutest thing ever. And now? Now it just made me cry. One day, months after everything, I ran into him at the grocery store. It felt surreal, seeing him standing there in the cereal aisle like nothing had changed, like we weren't two broken people trying to move on. He looked good. Better than I remembered. His hair was a little longer, and he seemed more at ease, like the weight of us had been lifted off his shoulders. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded, polite but distant. "Hey." And that was it. No long conversation, no second chances. Just two people who used to love each other, now reduced to awkward small talk between boxes of Cheerios and granola bars. As I walked away, I felt the finality of it hit me like a punch to the gut. Jake was really gone. And maybe, just maybe, that was what I deserved. Looking back now, I realized that cheating didn't just ruin my marriage. It shattered the version of myself I thought I knew. I wasn't the faithful wife, the reliable partner, the person who always did the right thing. I was human. Flawed. Selfish. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that healing isn't linear. Some days, I still wake up expecting to see Jake lying next to me. Other days, I remember that I have to keep moving forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Would I do things differently if I could go back? Absolutely. But life doesn't give you do-overs. It just gives you lessons. And this one? This one came at a cost I'll carry for the rest of my life. Months passed, and life moved on, at least, that's what I kept telling myself. The divorce was finalized, and I officially became a single woman again. It felt strange to check that box on forms, single. I wasn't sure if I felt liberated or just empty. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, volunteering for projects I normally wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole. Anything to keep my mind busy. But no matter how much I tried, there were moments, quiet moments, when the weight of it all hit me again. Like when I'd get home and instinctively call out for Jake, only to remember he wasn't there. Or when I'd wake up reaching for him, my hand grasping cold sheets instead. I hadn't spoken to Adam since ending things, and honestly, I didn't want to. Whatever we had, it wasn't real. It was built on fantasy and stolen moments, and the second reality hit, it crumbled. He'd texted me a few times after it all ended, thinking about you or hope you're okay, but I never responded. What was the point? One afternoon, I found myself driving aimlessly, with no destination in mind. I ended up at this little park Jake and I used to go to early in our relationship. We'd sit on the swings, talking for hours about our future, where we'd live, how many kids we wanted, what we'd name our dog someday. Funny how things never quite turn out the way you plan. As I sat there, watching the sun set, a thought hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been running, from the truth, from myself, from the fact that I had been unhappy long before I ever met Adam. The affair wasn't the problem. It was just a symptom of something deeper. I had ignored the cracks in our marriage until they split wide open. I finally admitted it to myself. I should have talked to Jake instead of turning to someone else. I should have been honest about how I felt, how trapped and invisible I was beginning to feel. Maybe we could have fixed it. Maybe not. But at least I wouldn't have had to live with the regret of never trying. A few weeks later, I bumped into an old friend at a coffee shop. Lisa. She always had a way of getting to the heart of things without sugarcoating. We sat down, and before I knew it, I was pouring everything out. She listened, stirring her latte, nodding at the right moments. After I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. You know, Em, you screwed up. But you're not the first person to make a mistake. I laughed bitterly. Yeah, but not everyone burns their whole life down in the process. She shrugged. Maybe not. But you can either keep standing in the ashes or figure out how to build something new. Her words stuck with me. I started making small changes. I took a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try but never did because Jake wasn't into that kind of thing. I started jogging in the mornings, focusing on myself instead of what was missing. And slowly, I felt pieces of myself coming back together, not the old me, but something different. Maybe even stronger. One night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I hovered over Jake's number. I hadn't reached out since our awkward grocery store encounter, but something inside me told me I needed to say something, anything. So I sent a text. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. I hope you're doing okay. I didn't expect a reply. But a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Thanks, Em. I'm doing okay. I hope you are too. That was it. Nothing deep, nothing emotional. Just closure. And maybe that was enough. It's been a year now. A whole year since everything fell apart. Some days, I still think about what could have been if I had made different choices. But I'm learning to forgive myself. To let go of the what-ifs and focus on what's ahead. I don't know if I'll ever love someone the way I loved Jake. But I do know this, next time, if there is a next time, I'll do better. I'll be better. Because at the end of the day, you can't undo the past. But you can learn from it. A year and a half later, my life looks completely different. The wounds have mostly healed, though the scars remain, tiny reminders of what I lost, of who I was back then. But scars don't have to define you. They can just be part of your story. Jake and I? We're strangers now. I still see him occasionally, passing each other at the gym or at mutual friends' gatherings. We're polite. Civil, there's an understanding between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything we went through. I think he's dating someone now. I don't ask, and he doesn't offer. It's better that way. I've changed jobs since then. I needed a fresh start, away from the whispers and side glances at the office. I moved into a smaller apartment closer to downtown, just me and my thoughts. It's cozy, filled with little pieces of who I am now, books stacked everywhere, unfinished paintings leaning against the walls, and a cat named Oliver who thinks he owns the place. Most importantly, I've learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. It wasn't easy. There were nights I'd sit on the floor, hugging my knees, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. I used to replay the moments over and over in my head. What if I had done things differently? What if I had fought harder? What if I had just told Jake the truth before it was too late? But you can't live in the what-ifs forever. One day, I was walking through the park, our park, the one with the swings, and I saw a couple sitting on a bench. They were laughing, leaning into each other in that effortless way people do when they're in love. And for the first time, I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel regret. I just felt hopeful. I think the hardest part of healing is accepting that you can't change the past, no matter how much you wish you could. You can apologize. You can learn. But you can't undo it. And that's okay. Am I proud of what I did? No. But I'm proud of who I've become because of it. I've learned to communicate better. To take responsibility for my choices. To understand that love isn't always grand gestures and wild passion, it's in the little things, the everyday moments that, if you're not careful, you can take for granted. I've been dating again, slowly. No one's serious yet, but it feels different this time. I'm not looking for someone to fill a void. I'm looking for someone to share my life with, when I'm ready. Sometimes, I still think about Jake. Not in a longing way, but in a he was a chapter in my life kind of way. And I hope he's happy. I really do. Because I finally am. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.